There's only sound. Okay.
So the video's turned.
Videos. I just pressed that one.
Okay, we're live. Okay.
I think you're right.
All right. Okay.
Hey. Hi everyone. Welcome to the Google Hangout on Songwriting Questions. This is Vanessa, obviously. Oh, you haven't seen Vanessa probably in person, but she is.
Hi.
So, were you going to give a preamble introduction, or should we get to the first question?
Well, I think you did say welcome.
I did. That concerns that. So, do we have any questions there? So, yeah, still not.
We've not got any video.
No, we've still got the cross through it. Sorry, everyone, we're just getting some technical difficulties sorted out. I couldn't get that cross off, Dave.
Yeah, interesting.
It was red before and now it's white.
Yeah.
You're on video.
Oh, we're on
Okay.
video.
Yeah.
Oh, we're there. Hi again. Sorry.
So,
Oh no, you're gone again.
I'm gone again.
why?
What did you just not? Oh no, you're back. You're back.
We're back. Here we are. Great.
Okay, and now where are the questions?
Where are the questions? Or here they are. Down the side.
Yeah.
Hi, Annie. We've got your first question. What's the difference between melodic and harmonic hooks, please? Thank you for your question. I suppose the concept of hook can be applied to anything. So it just means an idea that actually hooks you, so it captures your attention in a particular way. So in melodies, we most often hear this word in relationship to melodies because melodies often have a very memorable character to them, and the best ones are seen as having this kind of quality of hookness, and that they reel you in. So that happens with melodies, catchy ideas. Harmonic hooks, yeah. Think of a similar thing where you listen to a song and you find that when you're remembering it back, actually it was the harmonic sequence that in some way again had that sense of catchy memorability to it. It hooked you in. So there isn't essentially a difference. They are the same thing, just applied to different elements of the song.
Right.
Good.
Okay.
Vanessa's going to feed me another question.
Yeah, well, are we supposed to have more questions on the Google Hangout?
No, if you look for questions from there.
Okay. So on the step on the course, we had 2 questions from Anne Thrower.
Hi, Anne.
So the first one is there any way of learning how to stay in tune when singing without accompaniment, or is it just a matter of practice?
Yes, thank you for that question. It's a good question. And I'm afraid, as with most things, the answer is going to be the dull, boring one, that it is a matter of practice. There are various things that you can do, but basically to develop that sense of being in tune, you do need a guide in some way. Otherwise, how do you know if you're in tune or not? Which is why singing along to an accompaniment is particularly useful. There are, in studio work, obviously there are sort of bits of software that you can use that regulate your tuning. So when you listen back, you can tell how in tune you are. But I think for all intents and purposes, behind your question, I would say practice. Practice. Record yourself back and listen to how in tune you are. That can be a useful thing. But actually playing along with some kind of backing, even if it's just one note. So if I was maybe singing in the key of D, might just have a D ringing. It doesn't require any skill to play a D over and over again, and that might give you a framework to lock that pitch onto. Okay, good luck with that.
Second question by same person, same Anne, saying, I wanted to ask if there is any good software or something similar to help with the songwriting process, something that could help with chord progressions and adding extra notes to them to fill them out. But which is not too expensive. Well,
obviously, thanks again. Obviously, on the course we've mentioned this software Hookpad, which I do recommend you have a look at. If you haven't already had a play around with that, that enables you to select chords by chord name, chord type, to actually then just basically type them in to a framework and then to play it back. So that's definitely the best one, and it's freely available. In terms of other sorts of software, I mean, the music production world now is full of different kinds of software that enable and aid the compositional process. So, but they all tend to be quite expensive things that professional musicians use. So I would go with HookPad. Vanessa, I don't know if you know of anything else, but I would go with HookPad for that kind of learning about chord progressions.
Yeah, especially for chord progressions, yes. Yeah. I know other types of software which don't use necessarily notes, which deal with recordings. Free would be something like Audacity, but that's another area altogether. So.
Thank you.
And next one from Juan Barrena. His question is, how about some short, commonly used jazzy chord progressions to use in intros and interludes?
Oh, thank you, Juan. I mean, that's a huge topic. So I don't know how detailed we could get into that really within this kind of medium. But I mean, basically, jazz musicians really love the 2-5-1 and extensions on the 2 and the 5 and the 1. So, for example, 2-9-5-13 1-6 can be a really useful jazz chord progression. In terms of intros, you mentioned specifically intros and interludes. Sometimes you'll find you can make good headway by starting the progression away from chord 1. So again, using the cycle of fifths analogy, you could go into something like 6-2-5-1 as an intro or as an interlude. My basic advice with this always is to study the chord charts of the songs that you like. So if you're an avid aficionado of jazz, what I would do is follow a composer that you particularly respect. So, you know, Cole Porter or George Gershwin or Herbie Hancock, whoever it is, have a look at their chord charts and see if you can do a little bit of analysis of the ones where your ear sort of picks up and thinks, hey, that's really nice. I wonder what's going on there. Have a look at it, and then see if you can sort of replicate that into your own work. As I've mentioned before on the course platform, borrowing in music is where it's at. So there's no kind of disgrace at all or unethical behaviour in finding something that works really well in one composer's work and seeing if you can make that work with your own distinctive voice in your songwriting. Thanks, Carl.
Next question is by Adrian Otza. He says, can you explain where the E major and D major chords from In House of the Rising Sun, which otherwise appears to be in the key of A minor, Animals version?
Yes, I think this may have come up in one of the threads, Adrian. Thanks for that. I'm not sure if I can exactly remember the question, but in the key of A minor, E major would be chord 5. This is because it occurs as a 5th degree scale, so A, B, C, D, E. It's an E major chord rather than E minor if we're using the version of the minor scale called the harmonic. So if we're in A harmonic minor, I'm sorry, it gets a bit theoretical, but there are 3 kinds of minor scale that we can be in. And one of them is called the harmonic minor, and that produces that E major chord because the 7th degree of the scale is raised by a semitone. That 7th degree is a G, it becomes G sharp, and it's the 3rd of chord 5. There's a lot of information there all in one go, but go back through it, and that's why it's an E major chord. As far as the D chord goes, that has an F sharp in, and the F sharp is the 6th degree of the A scale, A, B, C, D, E, F. If you sharpen that, as you do in the melodic minor scale, you get a D major rather than a D minor chord. So the best way of thinking of a minor key is this, that rather than having a set of chords, a specific set of chords to play with, you've actually got a range of options, depending on which scale that you use, and you can move between those scales within a song. So you might find that you want to use a little bit of harmonic minor, and then go into a little bit of melodic minor, and then perhaps a little bit of natural minor. And you'll find that different chords crop up depending on which version of the scale you're using. In that particular song, they must be using the melodic minor version, at least for that strand, where the D major and E major chords occur. So I hope that was a completely transparent and clear answer for you. But yes, that's why. Have a look at your minor scale theory for more information.
Next question by Christine Busfield. Her question is, the 2 sections of my song refrain and verse seem too different, but the verse is a static scene which needs to hang out of time. A recitative in the classical sense might be suitable. Our daughter has told me to listen to Björk. What do you think?
The what do you think? It could apply to various bits of your question, couldn't it? It could be, what do I think about listening to Paul York, which I think is a good idea, because I think she's a great composer and songwriter with all sorts of interesting ways of cracking the songwriting conundrum. In terms of this sort of idea that different parts of a song don't necessarily hang together because they lack continuity, I would probably say that I don't believe in that. I mean, I think that it's all about what you can make work within the kind of style that you're trying to do. So yes, most of the songs that perhaps are in the charts, whatever, have this sense of sort of continuity, the sections hang together. But there's no reason that a song can't be anything that you want it to be. So having a sort of a static scene, which needs to hang out of time, the recitative kind of analogy that you make, to me sounds like a perfectly reasonable creative path to follow. So I don't think you should try and shoehorn a song into stereotypical types just because they're the things that we associate with songs, and that's what songs should be like. I think if you're following a different sort of creative path and saying, well, why can't I have a song that's like this and it works, then great. And if York can help you in that guided discovery of how to write songs that sound a little bit like that, then I think that's a good thing. She's great.
Okay, next question is by Annie James. She says, in one of the songwriter interviews, melodic and harmonic hooks were mentioned.
I think we've already
yes. Sorry.
It's okay.
Next one by Mary Jane. Yeah. Is it a good idea to change the original key in which I started the writing when in the middle of the process I think that maybe another key should be more suitable? Or do I have to stick to it and try to find a satisfying solution?
So, hi Mary, thanks for your question. If you're out there watching this, changing the key in which I started writing when in the middle of the process, I think that maybe another key would be suitable. I think that if you think it's more suitable, I would go back and change the key to the more suitable one. I mean, I think this is often a really important aspect of the process, and I've tried to mention this in the steps, which is that editing is often a more important part of the process than the initial, can I come up with an idea? Because when we're editing something, it gives us an opportunity to review and to evaluate the strength of our ideas. So this might be such an occasion where actually an initial idea that you've made, you are now reviewing and thinking, hang on a minute, maybe that wasn't the best key to choose. Perhaps this one would be more suitable. I don't know why it would be more suitable, perhaps because it suits your voice and the range of your voice, and that might be one of the things that you're thinking about. In which case, I would go back and change it, because I'm a great believer in changing things, upon that sense of evaluation. So does this really work? I think that one of the things that I think is really important, for example, is when you're very, very early on in the songwriting process or any kind of creative act, it's really, really difficult to work out whether your thing is any good. So I always recommend giving it a few days, listening again. Does this really work? Is there something I could change about it? Letting it sort of marinate really within your sort of conscious and subconscious states, and then returning to it with that in mind. So I say, change the key.
We just had a new question by John Cuthbert.
Hi, John.
Ooh, and
I think
a few more as well.
Yeah.
Well, let's go with John's question. He says, your answer on minor keys takes us into a fair bit of theory. How important do you think it is to have a reasonable understanding of theory to back up your ear, and what might come naturally?
Thanks, John, and hello if you're watching out there. This is a really good question, isn't it? And it strikes at the heart of lots of sort of educational views on the creative process, because as educators, we're trying to explain what's going on, but we're also trying to provide a guide to what people who haven't had much experience of a creative act like songwriting might want to do to write a song, for example. So it's a really pertinent question. As you may have picked up from some of the answers I've been giving on the within the course platform, I think it depends a lot on what you mean by understanding of theory. And I think that I would make the point that there's various ways of understanding it. So there's the way of understanding it whereby you can understand the concepts and articulate them back verbally. So you could ask me a question about minor keys, and I'd be able to tell you verbally about my understanding of those concepts, and hopefully it'd be reasonably accurate. However, we might have somebody here who was able to express their understanding of it in a very different way, a much more practical way. So, for example, often I'll have students at college or university who might be great improvisers on the guitar, for example. But if I was to ask them what they were doing, and they had to give me a verbal explanation of what they were doing, they'd be much less confident, much less secure in their understanding of what they're doing. Does that mean that they have less understanding? Well, I think the answer is no. They have an understanding, and they demonstrate, if you like, they access that understanding via their ability, their practical ability on a musical instrument. And actually within popular song, we would have to say that this way of understanding is often more prominent than the sort of understanding that I'm giving you, which is a more sort of educator's view of the process, where I'm trying to use words to explain to you, because you're not here with me, how these things might work. So sorry, this is a very long-winded way of saying that. I think the understanding of theory is a very useful thing, but is by no means essential, and you can understand it in different ways. So I wouldn't recommend just following the way that Adam White, for example, understands these things. I think you have to find your way of getting an understanding of these things. Is it by playing the piano or the guitar and actually practically understanding how the musical elements work together? Or is it following that up by reading some books on theory, doing a course like this, to kind of embed that knowledge in a different way? And I think either of those approaches is perfectly acceptable and fine and useful and effective, and it's just what would work for you, John, as a musician, and the musician that you're trying to be. I hope that's a clear enough answer.
Next question by Alison McNamara. If I'm changing a key to suit the singer's voice using a guitar, it can be achieved either with a change of chords or with a capo. What are your views on the merits and weaknesses of each option?
A capo question. Thanks, Alison. As a guitar nut, I love capo questions. The merits and weaknesses of each option. The merits of using a capo first. So the merits of using a capo are that you can play in any key virtually, but using only one set of shapes. So once you've learned the shapes, let's say in C, that you can play an open position, you can then use a capo to use those same shapes to play different keys. That's how capo works. The merits of not doing that, of changing key but using chord shapes, are perhaps that you are able to demonstrate a wider range of shapes, so that you know how to form these chords actually without a capo. So if a capo isn't available at a party, or if your capo breaks and you only know the shapes in open position, then it's a limiting factor on what you might be able to do. And I've seen that quite often, where someone would say, I can't sing the song because I don't have a capo. The other thing about capos is that it changes the resonance of the guitar. So sometimes if you put the capo in a very high position to play in a particular key, let's imagine you're putting it 8 or 9, sometimes even higher, the guitar can sound like a sort of a large ukulele rather than a large bodied instrument, because obviously you're basically restricting the string length, so it can vibrate less. So sometimes I don't personally like the sound of guitar music with capos at high positions because of that limiting factor on the resonance of the instrument. But apart from that, I think that most musicians, including myself, use both approaches and sort of think which works best for this song. Thanks for the question.
Next question by Marlon Ron. Are there any changing key combinations more suitable than others?
Hi, Marlon. Thanks for the question. It depends on what you mean by more suitable. I mean, certainly there are more likely options of which key you would go to from any given starting key. So if I was starting in a major key, the most likely key for me to move to is called the dominant, which is 5 up. So if I'm in C, C, D, E, F, G, I'm most likely to go to G. If I'm in G, G, A, B, C, D, I'm most likely to go to D. So this relationship between 1 and 5 is very, very important in all kinds of Western music in particular, and they are the most likely keys to go to. That, however, is a well-trodden path. So if you wanted to explore other relationships, common combinations can be tonic and tonic minor. So if I was in, in relative minor. So if I was in C, going to A minor can be a really nice change. Again, it would depend on the kind of song that you want to write and the kind of mood that you want in this contrasting section with the new key. So my answer is that yes, that tonic to dominant 1 and 5 relationship is the most common, but there are many, many other ways of exploring key relationships. Again, listen to some of the songs that you like and think manage that well, and then explore what the composer does in terms of key.
Okay. A question by Amanda Rowlatt, which goes, been very inspired by this course. Come the day I write a great song, what are the best ways to get it out there and heard? Maybe even picked up by an established artist.
Thanks, Amanda, and thank you. And I'm really glad that you are being inspired by the song. And I'm sure that that great song is just around the corner. In terms of how you get songs out there, I suppose it's become a much more sort of interesting process in the era of things like platforms like SoundCloud, and in the era of things like YouTube, obviously. It means that we can all publicize our own work and see if we can find an audience for them through a combination of recorded media and through live work. I suppose the most conventional way for bands is to create kind of a demo of some kind and then have that available both online and through live gigs, so that the two things feed each other. For individual singer-songwriters, it's certainly very possible to get your work out there by putting it on the platform like SoundCloud yourself, and then seeing whether through listening to other people's work and liking it and having that sense of an online community, people sort of pick up an interest in your work and you gather momentum, maybe then putting on a live gig to further cement that sort of growing reputation. So I think if I was starting out as a singer-songwriter, I would look to something like SoundCloud and start putting a few songs on there and then link in to various other people, so that I was getting people to listen to my work and to take their feedback into consideration in terms of how it was going down. So good luck. I will be listening out, Amanda, to see whether this great song gets out there, and maybe then an established artist will listen and think, I like this person's work, I wonder if I could cover their song. Good luck, Amanda.
Next question by Mark Hunter, who says, I was just wondering how much fun you had building the playlists, and were you tempted to just make them a collection of your favorite music?
Hi, Mark. They are just a collection, I have to tell you. They're disappointing you there. I use no ethical, like, these sorts of things. I had a lot of fun. I suppose one of the things about, you know, everyone likes that idea that other people are interested in your musical taste. You know, it's a very thing. You know, when I was a teenager, we were always making mixtapes for our friends and so on. You know, I've made this great mixtape, and I brought this Billy Joel track with the Supertramp track. They were not my musical taste, by the way. You know, and I'm going to share that around. So now I suppose it's a much more efficient way of doing that same thing, and it was great. It's quite nice to sort of listen to the songs as well and think, what bits of the course do these songs represent educationally? You know, and, we've had some great fun at sort of thinking of songs that do those things. The only regret about it is that as soon as you've made the playlist, then I'll be you know, on a train somewhere, and then I'll be thinking, oh my goodness, why didn't I think of using that song to describe that point? So it's always then churning around in my head that all the songs that I didn't. So I love the Cole Porter song I Love Paris, and I don't think I remembered in time to include it on my week 1 playlist about music and place, for example. So that's going on. But yes, if you can find me a job somewhere that just entails me writing playlists for other people to listen to, I'll be very happy doing that for a while. So yeah, fine with that. Thank you for that question.
Annie James asks, think a few of us want to know whether the course have a facility to give constructive feedback on individual songs if they are uploaded, shared on the Future Learn SoundCloud account.
Hi, Annie. I mean, it's interesting you say that, because Matt Black and I have just recorded a video that's going to be available on the course next week, and you'll see us listening to a selection of 16 songs, I think it is, that have been posted on the SoundCloud site. So have a listen to that. I think the other thing that I would say is I'm a little bit apprehensive about getting in, of turning a MOOC into something that becomes educators, you know, critically evaluating learners' work, because I think the aim of a course like this is basically to encourage people to get writing, and then to create a community whereby we can all listen to one another's work and share positively and enthusiastically the merits of those songs. And I think that's what is happening with the SoundCloud group. I know what you mean. It might be nice if you have this thing kind of like expert from above come down and say, you know, your song's great, but you need to just change the note in bar 3, and it'll be a great hit. But I think that starts to play around with the ethos of the platform, which is much more about community and sharing. And I think ultimately you learn an awful lot from getting your peers to listen and comment on your work. And the SoundCloud platform enables these little comments to be placed in your song at very specific points along the track. So I think that that's great. And hopefully you'll find the video that Matt and I have done. Watch it, tune in next week as soon as it's up, and have a look. And I think perhaps, you know, we shed some light on the things that we've valued, at least in the work that's been posted so far.
Another question by Juan Barrena. He says, thanks for the answer to the question. Greetings from Argentina.
Hi, Argentina.
I'm making a group with another learner from the course.
Fantastic.
Called Elisha. And we are stuck at the end of the bridge in our song. It's difficult to coordinate the scansion of the lyrics and music, and this Skype little delay doesn't help too much. Any suggestions?
So I imagine that the Alicia that you're working with isn't someone you can meet in person, so that when you're exchanging ideas, you've got the horrors of the Skype delay messing up your great scansion. Well, I suppose there's other ways that you could exchange ideas, isn't there? You could make little recordings and pass them back and forth. Little MP3 recorders, both on our phones and as separate devices, are very capable of recording ideas, and you can then say, Alicia, how about this as an idea for the scansion of this section of the bridge? Do you think it's any good? And she can have a go and then send it back. So there can be this sort of exchange, and I must admit that I use that an awful lot. I'm not always in the same place as somebody that I might be working with, so to record an idea and send it to them, however sort of poor the recording quality is enough for them to get an idea. I'm wondering whether your question was also about being stuck at the end of the bridge, and I can't really comment on that because I don't know what else is going on in the song. So I hope that it was more about communicating musical ideas via Skype, and that I've given you some insight. Yeah, I think Skype is okay as far as it goes, but the delay is an issue, as you mentioned. Good luck with that. Let's hope that the Juan Alicia songwriting duo becomes an amazing spectacle at the end of the course. I
think it's great that they're actually collaborating.
I love that. Yeah, brilliant.
From the Future Learn course. Next question by David Stedman. Would you be able to provide one of your lovely Saxon explanations of why a 1-4-7-3-6-2-5-1 chord progression is based on a cycle of fifths? Bearing in mind I have seen the circle or cycle of fifths, but have no inkling of what it is about or trying to tell me.
Thanks, David. And yeah, apologies for all of this kind of like terminology of fifths and Roman numerals. In music theory, we have all of these various systems and we use numbers to identify and label things that are going on in music, but sometimes we use ordinary numbers and sometimes we use Roman numerals, and the whole thing becomes quite complex and confusing if you're new to it. But specifically answer your question about circle of fifths. So this is just the idea that chords that move in a relationship where each chord is the fifth of the following chord creates a strong movement harmonically in music. So rather than thinking of the first chord, let's think of the second chord in the cycle. So I'm going to move to, let's say, I'm going to move to chord of G. So the chord that's 5 away from that, G, A, B, C, D. So we have D going to a G. Yeah. The G then becomes the fifth of the next chord that I'm going to. So what is G? Chord 5 of? It's C. C, D, E, F, G. So G then goes to C. So in this bit of the circle, this upper part of the crescent of the circle goes D, G, C. What is C? 5 of? C is a 5 of F. F, G, A, B, C. So then after that we have a C, and so on. So we can go. I can go all of the way around the clock face by going from 5 to 1, 5 to 1, 5 to 1. So that's a sort of partial explanation of how it actually works. Within an individual key, this is where your Roman numerals come in. If I give chord names to those Roman numerals, I would have C, F, B diminished, E minor, A minor, D, G. And if you go back over those numbers, you'll see that they follow exactly the pattern I mentioned to you before, which is the first chord is always in a relationship of a fifth apart to the chord that it precedes. And I hope that that was understandable in some way. It might need a few sort of workings through to fully grasp the idea, because it's, as I say, all of these numbers can get quite confusing at first.
And another question by Mark Hunter, who says, can you recommend any songwriting composition books to continue with after the course?
Hi Mark, thanks for the question, and hello if you're out there watching this. Yes, although it depends what you want the book to do, of course. So one of my favourite books, and maybe I won't be able to remember the author, but is a book which is about I think it's called Songwriters on Songwriting, and it's interviews with lots of different songwriters about the songwriting process. So from Paul Simon's in there, Leonard Cohen, Randy Newman, all sorts of great people, and they are interviewed about their approach and the methods that they use, and that's a very good book. In terms of a book that covers the kinds of things that we're doing, I don't know of this book. It may exist and just be outside of my awareness. And I think in some ways as well, books aren't the best way of learning about songwriting. I think there are lots of good books on the sort of the grammar of music, the theoretical underpinnings of music, and maybe have a look into those if theory is something that you need to gen up on. And then I think I would look at the creative process, so books like this one, and also maybe then look at things, probably the best books are books of chord sequences, strangely. So jazz musicians use something called, well, it's a sort of a collection of great songs really, where they're just chord charts. It's called a real book. And a real book is probably the best way of learning about songwriting, because it gives you hundreds of songs, and you can study the chord progressions, and you can study the melodic shapes, and you can study the bridge patterns, etc., and so on. So you've got sort of like a wealth of material that exists there. And you know, before the invention of and advancements in technology that we've all been able to take advantage of, living in the 20th and 21st centuries, composers used to do exactly this. To study music, they studied the works of other people, and I still think that this is a great and unsurpassable method, really. If you want to learn about music, study the music that's out there. Get yourself a book of songs by somebody that you like, or a group of people that you like, and have a look at how they do it. And that would be better than any instructional book on songwriting.
Okay.
Great questions, by the way.
So it seems that, we have a new question that just popped up. By Vasco de Souza.
Hi, Vasco.
So Vasco says, also when looking at forms like 32-bar forms or 12-bar blues, or the South Asian music mentioned in other forms, is there somewhere we can look up the rules? I know someone else mentioned Songwriting Books. I'm interested in anything that deals with specific forms.
Hi, Vasco. Thanks for the question. I might have to sort of come back to you on this and maybe post something on one of the threads. I don't know of a book that does what you're hoping it would do, which is to give you this great encyclopedic overview of the forms used not only in songwriting, but also sort of South Asian music, which is well, there are song forms there, but also instrumental forms. So I'm not sure that such a book exists. Certainly there will be basic books on form that would cover your first two examples, 32-bar and 12-bar. So I will raid my bookshelf later and we'll post some suggestions on the course platform. Again, though, I would think that if you want to study form, the best way of doing it is to look at the music that you like and to see if you can work out what sort of formal structures those composers or singer-songwriters are using in their work. That can often be the best way. It's not really the label of the form is much less important than what they're doing to create contrast and repetition. So all forms are basically about these two values in arts, contrast and repetition, and how we modulate between those, how we build tension by either going to or coming away from those particular values. So I will have a think about the books, but at the moment I say have a look at the works themselves and don't worry too much about the labels. Okay,
so it seems we're having not many questions come in, so please send us more.
Send us more. We're here, ready and waiting to answer anything.
Yeah, and meanwhile, I have some questions that I can ask you. if I can access them. Okay. So, my first question, a very classic one. What initially drew you to music? Has it become part of your identity?
Part of my identity. Well, some of the comments on the platform are very interested in the t-shirts I wear in some of the videos. So yes, why do I wear stripes, and has it got anything to do with my musical tastes? Is another question. I think to answer your question seriously, what drew me to music is a very complex question, isn't it? You know, why? I suppose most of the time, if we look into this scientifically, people are most likely to be drawn to pursuits that they have had in their environment when they're growing up. And certainly I had two parents who enjoyed and loved music. So I grew up with music being played around me all the time. And one of my first presents as a small child was a plastic Fisher-Price record player. Oh yes, and I had little plastic records, and my mum would always say just how delighted I would see putting these sort of nursery, probably horrible nursery rhyme records on continuously, sitting on the floor and putting the needle on over and over again. So I suppose I had music in my environment growing up, and that must have been a big part of what I assumed was normal and natural to the human world, that everyone had these wonderful sounds going on in their environment. So that's one thing. I suppose then moving on into sort of becoming an Adam rather than a child, relying on his environment for his inspiration. I've always loved that sort of the magic of music. You know, music does an enormous a number of things, and one of the things that it does, it kind of transports us to a different place. It can be a mood enhancer, but it can also be something far more profound than that. I think it can actually take us away from how we're feeling and where we feel we are, our physical environment. And I suppose I've always been fascinated by exactly how just sound, just pitches, just vibrations in frequency can do this. So being part of that process and trying to do some of that magic myself in my own ways has always been something that fascinates me greatly, both from the point of view of a creative person, but also in the point of view of an educator, and wondering, you know, what's going on in the brain, and this thing that we call music, and why is that relationship so special to humankind?
Well, thank you.
Good.
So we have a new question by Alison Namara. Trying to select
Namara,
it.
yes,
Okay.
hi Alison.
Okay. I found it really helpful to have a poem from which to start writing my first tune, and having seen this as a difficult and mysterious art, I'm delighted to have produced something with the help of this course. Do you have any recommendations for, and then the other part of the question, for a next step of having a go at writing words?
Hi Alison. So specifically lyric writing, becoming a lyricist. Well, I know that there are good MOOCs, and if you have a look at, without wanting to flag up the work of one of our university competitors, now they're not competitors in this environment, but companion universities across the pond, Berkeley University do a good MOOC on lyric writing. I'd certainly recommend that. I think it comes up a couple of times at least a year. So that's a really sort of good introduction. There's also a number of books on lyric writing, and I think that this is something that you can learn a lot about via a physical text rather than the sort of musical techniques, responding to, going back to one of the questions that someone asked earlier about songwriting books. So yeah, there's a lot of good books on lyric writing techniques that again, I can put some links up on the platform early next week. That's no problem. But have a look at the MOOCs on lyric writing, and they're useful, a good starting point. I think we've done those ones.
Yeah, we've done all of these.
So
well, I can go
give
with
me
you.
another one of your great questions.
Next question I have is, what do you get the most out of teaching?
Difficult question to answer, Vanessa. Thanks for that. I suppose probably the most satisfying thing is where you can not only enable someone to understand something that previously they didn't understand or were finding difficult to understand, but to give people a sense of belief in what they can achieve. So in educational language, we might call this efficacy, that the idea that one of the things that in order to be anything, the first thing that we have to do is to believe that we can be that thing. So I think the most important role of an educator is to impart a sense of efficacy in one's learners. And I think when you feel that that people have assimilated that idea that they can write a song, and that their songs can be great songs, can be as good as anyone else's songs, or that they can achieve things that previously they felt were sort of, you know, beyond that wall and belong to those people called songwriters over and out there in the netherworld, then I think you've done a kind of a great thing. I also think that doesn't have to be a sort of a top-down process. I think that can work from peer learning, and I think that we can have that relationship with other people once we learn how to share and exchange ideas with other people interested in the same things that we are. But I suppose in terms of me and what I've been about as an educator, it's been most satisfying to do that, to break that kind of that identity block that can often be the difference between us learning something really effectively and not learning it. So, and if anyone can do that for me with maths, I'd be really grateful, because that's something that I don't at the moment have an identity as a mathematician, and perhaps I'd quite like to have that.
Great, thank you again. Next question, Marlin posted a new one, which I'm selecting now. And it goes, I make my music in according to my family, it's great. It is my family. But when I start to sing, the magic is destroyed. Thanks to the course, I know I must sign as myself, searching for my key. But if it does not work, I will check for singers, right?
Yeah, maybe. I wondered, Marlon, whether it was meant to be I must sing as myself, searching for my key. So yeah, thanks for the question. I suppose one of our initial audiences is often our family, or the people that inhabit our house, isn't it? And get exposed to both our sort of our songs as they're developing, and also the way that we might be trying to put them across. And a family is a great audience, but it's not really a critical audience. So sometimes it's best to bring other people into that, bring people around, knock on the neighbour's door, and say, "I'm just coming up with this. What do you think of this? Does this sound any good?" I remember once that Matt Black and I had just written a new piece, and we thought, we're not really quite sure if this works. I know, let's ask some people to listen to it and see what they think. It wasn't anyone from our family, but it was some people that happened to be in my house at the time, and I asked them to listen to this and say, what do you think of this? So that was quite nice. I think that finding that sort of sense of belief, going back to my other question about, that sense of identity, that I can be a singer or a songwriter, is really important. So I think that if the course has been one small little, chunk of that belief developing in you, that's a great thing. I think you can certainly, seek out people that can sing your work. If one of the things that you're worried about is, whether you're good enough technically to put across your work to its optimum value. The only thing I'd say about that is, most of us are not professional singers, myself included, but I don't always listen to music because of the technical quality of a singer. I listen to the sense of honesty and character that person has. So a lot of the singers that I like to listen to and have listened to my whole sort of listening career, Leonard Cohen, Bob Dylan, Randy Newman, I don't think they're good singers technically at all. In fact, they've got rather strange, screechy, funny, or dull voices, but they have enormous character in their voices. And at some point, they had the sense of belief that other people would like to hear them sing their songs too. And actually, when I hear other people sing their songs, even if they're much better singers, I always prefer the original, because it has that sense of connection, authenticity, if you like, between the writer and what they're singing about. So I love it when people who don't have technically perfect voices sing their own material. So Marlin, keep going with with singing your own stuff, and let Mariah Carey sing her own songs.
So we have another question by Amanda, saying, I seem to lack the knowledge and ability to produce a song as I'd like to. Can you say something about the importance of production in presenting a song? Where would be a good place to start learning more about the recording and production process?
Hi, Amanda. Thanks for that. It's a difficult question to answer, because production depends on equipment. And although that equipment is becoming more and more sort of readily available for not too much money, you do need access to some kind of studio to learn about that. So again, there are good MOOCs out there on studio production, studio techniques. I'd really recommend you have a look at those, both within FutureLearn, I think, but certainly within the American MOOC platforms. So that would be a good place to start. The other thing is to use something like Audacity that Vanessa mentioned earlier, a basic program that's freely available to start recording your work. And then to identify the things that doesn't do that you want to do. So what do you need? Do you want to add more instruments, for example? Do you want to sort of build an arrangement? And in week 6 of the course, you'll see me go into the studio with some musicians and to look at the way in which a song might sort of take more life, bring more life to itself in a studio environment where you can add lines and you can sort of tweak the quality of the sound and so on. So you probably got a friend somewhere or a member of the family who does have a basic studio setup, or even a local studio that isn't very expensive to hire. It can be quite nice to go in there with a bunch of musicians to get a sound engineer and say, look, we've got a few songs. Let's see how they sound when sort of produced in a studio environment. But maybe start small and see what you can do on your own laptop. It's quite amazing these days with something like GarageBand or other music software that's freely available. You can add lines, you can add effects. And Vanessa, I mean, you deal quite a lot with. I don't know if you would add any more to knowledge or expertise to that question.
Yes, well, I could say that laptop work is more and more widespread, and really, if you only have a good pair of headphones and just have confidence in your listening ability and just listen for things that you want to get into to hear in your song, will help you a lot already. And so the recording, you'll know how to process it, no matter the tool, really. Yes, so my composition process is really much about listening and listening and listening. So yeah.
Cool.
We have another question by David Stedman saying, resolving a chord sequence, is that always done by going back to chord 1, the tonic chord, or can you resolve in other ways?
Thanks, David. Good question. Although the answer might be less satisfying than you hoped, and it would depend what the chord was that you were hoping to resolve. So the simple answer is it doesn't have to be chord 1. The notes that are in the existing chord that you want to resolve might resolve to a number of different places. I mean, an easy example to give you would be that, for example, in C major, chord 6 is A minor, has 2 of the same notes as the tonic chord. Sometimes you can resolve, for example, a G to an A minor, and it gives you some sense of resolution because it has a C-ness to it, without it being a complete sense of resolution. So you don't always have to go to chord 1. You can give different kinds of resolution depending on the chord that you're coming from.
All right. So someone from Twitter called Matty posted a question saying, what do you do when you're writing a song and realize it sounds like another song? Yeah,
it's really very, very hard not to do this at some point, and I guarantee you that everybody has done this at some point, where basically your brain is like, as we heard when we had the article on the psychology of music, and in terms of these little bits of music that get caught up in our brain. The brain is great at storing patterns. So all of the songs that we've heard many times within our life, both from sort of childhood to adulthood, do contain hooks, and they do store in the brain very, very easily, which means that our brain is a bit of a whirlpool of all of these different melodies kind of sort of floating around, if you like. That's probably not the best scientific explanation, but that's what it feels like often. So sometimes what we're doing is repatterning those ideas when we think that we're writing a new song. I think that the only way that I know how to stop myself thinking that I've just written a fantastic song only to wake up the next day to realise that it's Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen has already been written, is to give it a little bit of time to go away from it and then listen to it again. So maybe a week later you'll think, hang on a minute, I don't think this is, you know, this song by Adam White. I think it's actually me just regurgitating something that my brain is hooked onto. The other good thing is play it to somebody that you know who also, you know, of a musical kind of taste, and get them to hear, does this sound like any other song you've heard before? Oh yes, that sounds just like Yesterday by the Beatles. I knew it was like that. So, but yes, don't feel embarrassed in any way that your brain sometimes says, hey, we've written a great new song, but it actually turns out to be one of the millions of songs that are already out there. It happens, you know, there are millions of different, gazillion different combinations of different notes, obviously, and rhythms. So there are many, many more songs to be written, and it's just difficult sometimes to avoid this particular trap, but that's what writing songs is about, I'm afraid, in part.
So, okay, a comment by Annie James. I think it's, I'm not sure if it's here. Yeah, just, it's nice when it's streaming. But okay, so it says, the music theory has been pretty challenging, and my approach has been pretty intuitive and very much by what just sounds and feels right, as I'm no accomplished musician. This course has given me much more confidence to identify and understand song structure and how I can put things in place to make my songs better. It's all been good, but my favorite parts have been all the songwriter interviews and their approach to composition. Big thanks to you all.
Fantastic, Annie. Thank you very much for taking the time and trouble to write in your thanks. It's very gratifying to know that you know that particular part of the course has been useful to you. So keep going with that. Yeah, and it does take a bit of time. Don't worry about being an accomplished musician. What's an accomplished musician anyway? They're not always the people best served to come up with the best ideas. So you know, keep going, Annie.
So a new question by Penny Killaway, saying, will you be listening to other songs as they are created and put up on SoundCloud? I'm busy with mine still, and it has only reached the melody stage, and just put up late this afternoon. Thanking you in advance for your anticipated response.
Hi, Penny. Thank you. Yes, absolutely. The answer to your question is that all of the songs that are posted up there I'll listen to, and I will keep listening to them, even for a few days after the course actually finishes at the end of next week. So please put it up there, and I look forward to hearing your version. Don't worry that you're still at the melody stage. Writing a melody, a good melody, is the most important part, I think, of most songs. So if you're getting on well with that, you're a long way along the process. So yeah, I look forward to listening to it. I look out for it.
Great. Next question by Andrea Teasdale, saying, I've enjoyed putting the My Town lyrics to music, but I'm struggling to find some lyrics of my own for a new song. I have a melody, rhythm, harmony, but no words are coming. Have you any tips?
Hi, Andrea. Thanks for the question. Hello, wherever you are. Is your question, how do I come up with good words to the melodies and rhythms that I'm coming up with? I think that's quite a difficult thing. Again, I'd recommend the lyric writing MOOCs that are out there. In terms of coming up with your own words, I think quite often what songwriters do is they do a number of fairly basic things, really, which is that they come up with a fairly simple idea, a really, really simple idea. And then they find ways of rhyming that idea to write what's called a couplet. So if you look at my first video in the course, which was how to write a song in a nutshell, what I tried to do there was to write some incredibly simple words. I think it starts with something like my race is run, my play is done, for example, like that. So come up with a sort of a rhyming couplet like that. It's really easy to scan that when you then try and set that to music, and then have some repetitive ideas. So in that particular song, it has a sort of a little refrain at the end of each verse, which is a common enough technique. So you know, they are by no means profound or great lyrics, but they do enable you to find a way of generating the relationship between melody and words. The other thing that you might want to do is to try some other poems. You know, there are some great poems out there that haven't been set to music or have already been set to music. So if you have a listen to something like Maggie, Millie, Molly and May by E. Cummings, it's a nice little poem, and have a go at it first yourself, and then see what other people have done. There's a nice version by Natalie Merchant, for example. You could have a listen to what she does with those words. But I think keep a notebook, start jotting down words, sequences of words, patterns in words and rhymes that you like when you're on the bus, on the train. Kate Jackson says how nice it is to come up with ideas when you're traveling, and I would certainly concur with that. And see what, you know, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, at the end of the season, you'll have a whole notebook full of ideas about words, and then, you know, dip into those. They will start formulating into little phrases that you can then write as lyrics. So good luck with that, Andrea.
Next question by David Holloway. Have you grown tired of hearing so many different versions of My Town?
Do I look tired like I did in the week 2 Melody video?
And are you tempted to arrange and record a definitive version?
I am. I want to put an end to all of this My Town malarkey with the definitive version that will inhibit everyone else from writing their own one. So do I grow tired? I think that, you know, there is definitely something about hearing so many versions and having written so many. So if you go to the of my own, so if you go to the end of week 6 next week, you'll see me sort of busking in Sheffield Town Centre and doing 6 or 7 versions of the My Town lyrics from Matt in different musical styles. It did threaten to send me slightly insane for a while, even more insane than I was at the beginning of the process. So there is a little bit of that kind of growing tired of hearing it. On the other flip side of that, though, is having listened today with Matt at the version that they're posting on SoundCloud, I was actually amazed and gratified and very satisfied that I wasn't tired of hearing the work that you're producing, because there were such different styles, and styles that I would never think of using those words within. So I think I'm tired of my own brain's reaction to My Town, but not the way in which your brains are responding to it. So, but yes, I haven't ever had such an intimate relationship with a set of words before. Thank you.
So we have 5 minutes left, and
get your questions in.
Yes.
Post them now.
You
Knock on the door
questions,
here and deliver them by hand if you're in Sheffield, and we will endeavour to answer them.
Yes.
In the meantime, Vanessa, do you have another question?
Of course.
Good.
So next question I have is there a difference between teaching online and teaching in more traditional settings?
Yeah, there are some similarities, obviously, in that the content of what you're saying is broadly similar, but there are some huge and fundamental differences. And one of the great things about this platform that I've said to some of my colleagues here is the notion of the classroom, and how the classroom is a fantastic kind of place in this medium, which is worldwide. It's people from every conceivable sort of background and location. And also that you get much more peer-to-peer learning. So when you're in a traditional classroom environment, I suppose there's less obvious peer-to-peer learning, in that most of the learners have a direct kind of contact with you. So the education is quite sort of top-down. And I think I prefer a more sort of democratic model for education, where the educator is facilitating, providing guidance, providing specific information where need be, but they are sort of in the middle of that process. And I think that the MOOC platform enables that to a far greater extent than the traditional classroom. So yes, there are big differences.
Thank you. So 2 minutes. That's if you have one question left.
Yes, the definitive question on songwriting still needs to be asked. So if you're out there,
What's your highlight of the course?
Sorry, was that? Okay.
Or one that's being transmitted.
What is your highlight?
The highlight of the course, yes.
The highlight of the course in terms of the content. It's a really good question. I mean, I really like a lot of the content, and one of the great joys of being an educator on the course was seeing how other people sort of conceive of the songwriting process, how they articulate that. So, I mean, I love the sort of interviews with Matt Mouth and with Kate Jackson. I suppose one of the people that I've enjoyed working with most is Neil McSweeney. Neil is somebody that I knew before the platform, but he's a songwriter that I greatly admire, and I think that his approach to sharing his craft with you via the 2 videos that he did was really good, very, very informative, but also he has an approach that I really relate to, which is that I'm just somebody trying to put words and music together, coming up with these things for you to find value in, and this is how I do it. I really liked his very no-nonsense, non-ego approach to that process.
All right. So one last question, I suppose, 1 minute. Annie James again says, quick ticky questions then. If you have to put your song up on your own SoundCloud account, do you know if it can be shared to the Future Learner account, please?
I don't know the question to that, but maybe you do. I don't know the answer to that.
Yes, well, a hint is that use the hashtag FLSong.
Yeah.
So we can find it.
Yeah. So if you tag it with hashtag FLSong, then
when you upload
it, then yes, the answer is yes. Well, it is 8 o'clock, and we're coming to the end of this hangout. Thank you all very much for your questions, and I hope that we've been able to provide some kind of interactive element the MOOC platform doesn't provide in the videos, and that you found some of the answers that I've given at least partially useful. And yeah, do tune into Matt and I's video in week 6, and continue to engage with the songwriting process and post your songs on SoundCloud. And thanks very much, and goodbye from Vanessa.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye from me in a nice spring Sheffield evening. Bye.